Today you're going to learn the secret to breaking through to your next level, and good news, it's not going to require you to work any harder. I've built a business where I've sold millions, yet I answer fewer than 10 emails per week. I have 800 clients, but I work no harder than when I had just 80. All of this has freed me up to pursue major opportunities, like speaking at prestigious universities like NYU's Stern School of Business and University of Texas's McCombs School of Business as well. Not to mention when I was a regular contributor to Forbes. This secret changed everything for me 14 years ago. Since then, I've gone on 8-day vacations completely off grid, no email, no Slack, no meetings, just vacation. And despite not doing any client delivery myself these days, my team and I have achieved the best results in our industry, and it's not even close. These days, my foot is still very much on the gas because I have a big ambition and vision, and I'm going to guess that you have a very big vision and lots of ambition too. It's all possible, and knowing this one secret ingredient will unlock so much happiness, so much achievement, freedom, peace, income, and it'll help you make that much of a bigger difference in the world as well. And it all came down to this one secret, which I'm going to share with you today. Now first, a quick update on the goals I've been sharing with you day by day. In business, right now I'm learning how to be a much better marketer. I've never really thought of myself as being a good marketer. In fact, I kind of avoided it if I'm being totally honest. But I've decided to put my big boy pants on and get down to work. I think of it as going pro, which is a term I've used for many years now. I'm challenging myself to get good at creating content, and I'm telling you it has been painful. The last 2 videos I created took me over 4 hours to create and edit, and it is seriously kicking my butt. Just look how totally exhausted I was this morning, and in fact, how totally exhausted I still look today. I gotta tell you, I'm exhausted. I was up actually till 4 in the morning editing last night's video. These are the faces of a man who is wrecked. Yikes. Every time I create a piece of content, I'm making notes on how I can get better. I know ultimately the goal is to delegate video editing to an editor. The problem right now though is that I don't even really know where to start because I don't really know what I want. Do I want a daily vlog? Do I want a talking head style video? Do I want them to be 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Is it freestyle commentary or is it more scripted? Like I've written a whole script here today. And this is the hard part of any project. I call it the Indiana Jonesing. My team affectionately calls it Tim Deanna Jonesing. It is hard, it is slow, it is time consuming, it's agonizing, and in this case, incredibly exhausting too. Now let's talk about my main health goal, which is to improve, ironically, my sleep. This is gonna be hilarious. All you gotta do is look at how much time I'm spending creating content, and you can see very quickly that my sleep has plummeted. In fact, here are my sleep stats from the last 2 nights. 2 nights ago, 4 hours and 3 minutes of sleep. Followed up last night with 3 hours 55 minutes. Ouch. You'd swear I have a newborn, but all I have is a new YouTube channel. The biggest thing I've discovered I can do to help get more sleep is to just start video editing earlier in the evening. So I asked my girlfriend to help me. She agreed on one condition, and here's her rule.
So I told Tim that before we left, there's one rule before we go to dinner. I said, Tim, if we run into anybody on the streets, hi bye. And the reason I say that is because this guy obviously knows everybody, and being in downtown, it's kind of nice. You tend to run into people all the time, just walking down the street. So I told him we're trying to help him get to bed at better hours because he's working on his sleep and not staying up so late. So we only had 1 hour to get to dinner and to walk there. So I said, okay, Tim, if we run into someone, it's no 30-minute conversations. We'll be running behind.
Another area I have some big goals this year is in relationships. And so Leslie and I have some exciting relationship goals here in 2025. One of those is getting her business off the ground. She's starting a video production company, focused specifically on video marketing. Her first few projects have already been really impressive. Like I myself have been blown away with the caliber of what she's done. In no time flat, she is going to be an absolute beast. What a productive day. What did you get up to?
So I actually bought a course on becoming a videographer. So really exciting. It was actually on sale. And it literally has like 22 courses in it. Everything from how to start your business, how to come up with your name, your logo, when to form an LLC, camera gear, lighting, all of the stuff. And so I just was deep diving in that all day. Super excited.
With that, let's dive into the secret to unlocking your next level. Now this may sound funny, but the secret to unlocking your next level is surrender. Now when I say surrender, I don't mean giving up. What I mean is The thing that you're resisting right now, the thing that you're unwilling to do, or maybe the thing that you're unwilling to give up, is precisely the thing that you need to do next. Or maybe it's the thing you need to give up next. In fact, whatever you want is on the other side of that surrender. To surrender is actually to say, I'm so committed to my goal, I will do whatever it takes, including giving up certain things or giving up certain opinions on certain items. The reason that success sits on the other side of surrender is because of the old adage, what got us here is not going to get us there. It's kind of like graduating from riding a bike to driving a car. At some point, you can only pedal so fast and you need to switch vehicles. So you decide to get a car. You're excited because a car will take you further, faster, in greater comfort, with less effort, and certainly more style. What's not to love? But then, imagine, you get into that car and you do the exact same thing that you'd been doing when you were on a bike. You put your feet on the pedals and you push left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Suddenly you've got whiplash, you've damaged your car, and you've made zero progress. In fact, you might even say that you have regressed. When you thought about the bike though, going left, right, left, right, left, right on the pedals was actually the formula for success. And in fact, the more you could do it, the better. But here we are in a car and it's a total disaster. You're now in a spot where the problem is not the car. The problem is not the bike. The problem is that you didn't change how you showed up when you changed vehicles. The moment you change how you show up though, that is the moment that you surrender and you unlock your next level of success. So far on my entrepreneurial journey, there have been 7 moments of surrender I can distinctly notice where I surrendered and it changed everything. These moments have completely transformed my business, my team, and even my personal life. These moments of surrender have allowed me to make millions more, make a way bigger difference in the world, and also feel so much happier and so much more relaxed in my life. The crazy thing is I completely hated every one of these moments of surrender and I avoided them like a billionaire avoids taxes. Now in a moment, I'm going to share with you my 7 moments of surrender. And I have to tell you, I'm kind of actually embarrassed by many of them. In fact, the first one especially is particularly embarrassing for me. Perhaps in my 7 moments of surrender, you'll see yourself as having some of those same challenges. And I guess I'm sharing this so that you can see that it's simply a growth point where you've got some growing pains. And if you do surrender in that moment, you will break through to the other side. So with no further ado, let's dive in. My first surrender was success takes time. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I was convinced I'd be a millionaire by 30. I was convinced that all it would take would be 5 years and then I would be set. I'd have it made in the shade. I could set it and forget it and everything would be perfect. I'd have all the passive income I could ever need. And I would be laughing all the way to the bank, making fun of all those idiots who didn't have the intelligence to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and do what I did. Suddenly though, I failed and I failed a lot. I lost a lot of money. I ended up developing a stress-related illness. It was bad news. It was only through going to very, very dark places and failing so deeply that I realized this is going to take time. In fact, there's no guarantee that I succeed in a year or 5 years or even 10 years. And I'd seen a quote around that time that said, live your life for 5 years like few are willing to, so that you can then enjoy a life few ever will. So in my mind, I had a 5-year bargain. Well, I will tell you, 7 years into my journey, I was $250,000 poorer. I couldn't walk and I was back living with my parents for full-time care. There are no guarantees here. It's simply going to take a long time. And so this was my first surrender, admitting to myself that this was going to be the long game. Once I embraced that long game though, my mindset shifted. I kind of sat up a little bit taller and I simply said, okay, whatever it takes, whatever it takes. Getting through that phase allowed me to get onto the playing field in a really meaningful way. I got really focused on becoming so good they couldn't ignore me, as the old expression goes from Steve Martin, be so good they can't ignore you. And in doing so, I started to get clients, and those clients brought me more and more revenue. And I was like, wow, I'm actually starting to get somewhere. In fact, there was a downside though. That downside was that there was now a lot of work to be done, and I knew I needed an assistant. I had already failed with my first 5 assistants. And my approach with most assistants had been like, well, they're just going to be kind of part-time freelancers. They should be able to just figure things out on their own. I think that they should be able to kind of be resourceful and find videos on YouTube to train them on whatever they need. If I miss a weekly meeting, that totally makes sense if it's to meet with a client or to do something that's going to grow my business. I'll figure out meeting up with my assistant just whenever it can kind of fit into my schedule. That was my approach. Well, suffice to say, I failed over and over and over again. And each time I got mad at the assistant until one day I looked in the mirror and, like a person who'd been divorced 5 times, I realized maybe I was the issue. And this led me to my second moment of surrender. And it was surrendering to the fact that I needed to make my assistant my top priority. My clients, not my top priority. Other team members, not my top priority. My assistant, my top priority. Now, I look back and I used to think of my assistant as kind of like a subordinate person who's at arm's length. I expected them to just figure things out on their own. And when things didn't work out, I assumed it was, because they weren't a very good assistant. After all the failures, though, and I realized I was probably the common denominator in all 5 failures, my mindset flipped. I started asking the question, what if I treated my assistant as if they were my boss? What if I were to surrender to whatever they need? And even though in the org chart of my business, I'm the superior and they're the subordinate, what if I made them the superior and I was a subordinate? What happened next was remarkable. What do you think happens when an assistant suddenly has a leader, that's you and me, who's like, hey, whatever training you need, let's get it done. You want to book some time today, tomorrow? Hey, can you check in with me at the end of the day? I want to make sure that you get unstuck on anything that comes out through the day. And then from there, like, what happens when an assistant has weekly support, maybe two meetings a week where you never ever miss a weekly meeting with them? What happens when you're patient and a thoughtful delegator with that assistant? What happens when you invest time into getting to know who they are as people and you review their work to give them feedback so they know how to get better? By surrendering to your assistant, guess what happens? They get really, really good, really, really fast. That builds their competence and confidence. And guess what that means? You've got an assistant with tons of confidence and competence. They're taking tons off your plate and they're working independently before you even know it. And before you even know it, they even start predicting what you need. And isn't that interesting? An assistant that does all that, guess what? Gives you your time back. So counterintuitively, by surrendering and saying, I will be my assistant's assistant, if you will, at their beck and call to help them with anything that they need, that maximizes how fast I actually get to be free. Doesn't that sound wild? That's how it goes, though. And we see that happen over and over and over and over and over again with our clients. Those that decide, I'm going to surrender to my assistant. I am not going to cancel a meeting with my assistant just because a client asked to meet with me at a certain time. No, that client's going to have to find another opening in my calendar. I am not going to cancel this meeting with my assistant because some other big business opportunity came up. No, I'm keeping the meeting with my assistant. I'm not going to skip this training session that I had planned with my assistant because I have some personal opportunity to go to a fitness class or go on a field trip or something like that. My assistant is the most important person in my business life. Now, obviously there's exceptions. If you have family emergencies or other family needs, obviously you get to choose what is a priority. That's why you're an entrepreneur. I think though, even if you don't agree with the specific examples I've given, look at the spirit of where I'm coming from. If you embody that spirit, then the speed with which your assistant is going to get dang good and create tons of free time for you will take your breath away. So the surrender wasn't just about training my assistant, it was transforming how I led across the board. And I took that approach with other team members later down the road, and it was remarkable how much freedom they all gave. This leads me to my third surrender. And we're really starting to get into some scary territory here. Letting go of my email inbox. I will always remember the day. It was probably about 11 years ago. I was in my 1974 townhouse up in a suburb of Edmonton, Canada, and my hand was trembling like this. Like you would have sworn that I was like a heroin addict or something that was in not remission, in detox. And it's absurd. I wasn't in any danger. There was no grizzly bear chasing me, yet my heart was pounding, my pupils were dilated, the adrenaline and cortisol was pumping, and you would have sworn that I was like under some kind of physical attack. And yet all it was the morning that I was handing off my email inbox to my sister. And I remember that I used to, that I was like stalling. I'm like asking her about her kids, her dog, her deceased dog, her kids' friends. Like it was clear that I was stalling. And finally I went and did it, and it was terrifying. My inbox used to control my life. I couldn't imagine handing it over to someone else. What if they missed something? What if something slipped through the cracks? What if they said something wrong to a client and now that client was angry? The fact was, though, if I was being totally honest, I was never going to fulfill my potential in this lifetime as long as I was stuck in my email inbox all day. Whatever I might potentially miss out on if an assistant made a mistake, I was probably missing out on 10 times more by being stuck in my email and not pursuing my greatest opportunity. When I finally surrendered and handed control of my inbox to my assistant, it really did feel terrifying. But I asked myself a handful of questions. What would have to be true that this could go from feeling like outright risk to managed risk? And the way that I managed that risk was to do things like a criminal record check on my assistant and having them sign a non-disclosure agreement. And I actually did 15 hours of one-on-one training with my assistant to make sure they understood every acronym, every product, every VIP person. And I really took them by the hand through everything. So there's a few strategies. There's more strategies, but as a few examples, it was really allowed me to feel like I was not just jumping off a cliff, that actually I had some safety mechanisms in place. So those were the first 3 surrenders. The 4th surrender was delegating production. Now, if you've ever said, no one can do it as well as me, and that's maybe had you feel hesitant about working with a great assistant, let me tell you, that feeling only goes up by 3x or 5x or 10x when you're now delegating the entirety of production to other people and trusting them that they're going to deliver the service that you were known for delivering. I used to think, no one can do this as well as me. And I used to think, what if my team gets it wrong? What I was not asking, though, is what if they get it right? What if they get it right? Because if they get it right, that means I can go do this and I can do that and I could write a book and I could start creating content and I could do any number of things to build a business. All of that is the opportunity cost of saying no one can do it as well as I can. And that cost becomes painful and dangerous and crippling before you know it. What's interesting is once I had started to delegate production, I really realized how true that Tim Ferriss quote was. The quote is, if you want the big things to go right, you have to be okay with some small things going wrong. I first really encountered that in the 3rd surrender when I was surrendering to my assistant and helping them with everything. And I really, really felt it in the 4th surrender, which was delegating production to production teammates. What's interesting is what I learned about delegating to my assistant became amazing training wheels to make me very good at delegating later to other team members as I was building the team, bringing on more production people. Now, this 5th surrender, this one may be extra confronting. In fact, I should have said at the start of this video, it's going to get harder and harder as we go here. And I don't know if this is the same for you, but for me, I hate accounting. Oh my word, do I hate accounting. At least that's what I used to say. You see, I failed math 3 times, once in 12th grade and twice in university. And because I could never figure out calculus, I never got into business school. To this day, I've been a guest lecturer where I'm teaching business students in MBA programs yet. I don't have an MBA. In fact, I don't even have a bachelor's degree in business because I could never make it in. So I made this decision about myself that I'm not a numbers person. And because I'm not a numbers person, then keep accounting away from me, keep it 1,000 miles away from me. I don't want to touch that thing with, a 1,000-foot pole. Until one day my business grew to the point where I didn't understand what was going on. And now not understanding accounting was becoming a major handicap. As in, I would look at an income statement that my accountant would give me, and from one year to the next, I would see more and more revenue, but then I'd open my bank account and I'd look at my bank account and there was the same or maybe even less money in there. And I'm like, how can that be? I just sold twice as much, 3 times as much, 5 times as much as just a few years ago. And here I'm like broke, like what is going on? So I remember calling my accountant and saying, what's the deal with this? And he said, oh, well, it's blah, 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 blah. And I didn't understand much what he said. So I said, okay, can you explain that to like a 3rd grader? He's like, oh yeah, well, it's just this, and this ratio means that, and blah, 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 blah. And at that point, I just felt like a fool because even his grade 3 student explanation was still above my head. And I just politely said, thank you, goodbye. And that was it. The exact same thing happened the very next year. And my accountant, and I hated it when he said this to me, but he was totally right, is he said, Tim, you have a lot of really good questions, more than I can possibly answer for you, right here, right now. I'm going to recommend you go take night school, go find a nighttime basics of accounting class at a college or university. I bet you it answers a ton of your questions. I hung up that call and I was like, F you, bro. I pay you to know this stuff and teach me so that I don't have to go get accounting classes at university. Forget that. Soon after that, I again put on my big boy pants and I started looking around, and sure enough, there were night classes at the University of Alberta in accounting. Now, they were not accredited for credit. I couldn't have gotten that because I wasn't in business school because I couldn't finish math, but it was non-accredited, more so for kind of like adult learners, which at this point, that was me at the University of Alberta. So I always remember going to that first class. I rolled up, it was wintertime. There was snow crunching under my tires. My vehicle stopped. I could see my breath in the cabin of the car. And in that moment, I nearly just turned the car back on and drove home. I had to grab my books and basically run out of that car before the fear of looking like an idiot overtook me. I had to outrun my emotion to get into that first class because I was so afraid to be there. I sat in the back corner so that I was close to the exit if I needed to leave, and I was looking for any excuse to think that this professor was an idiot. Well, I mean, the real idiot in the room was me, because here I'd been an entrepreneur for all these years. I knew nothing about numbers, and now it was a major problem. Lo and behold, by the third class, I was like, oh, I think I'm actually maybe starting to understand this a bit. On the midterm, I got 100%. And by the end of the class, I finished at the top of the class. Learning those basics of accounting led to me being able to help consult to a number of companies. And to date, I've now helped 11 companies avoid bankruptcy, and I've helped at least a dozen companies find over $100,000 in new free cash in under 90 days. So the financial impact I've been able to make by surrendering to this idea that I'm not a math guy, just kidding, I'm going to take responsibility for that. I'm going to go put my big boy pants on, I'm going to go take some classes. That changed everything. And that was my fifth surrender. Is this getting harder and harder or what, right? Now, this next one, maybe this comes naturally to you, but my sixth surrender was actually mastering sales. Now, mastering would be generous. I'm still not a master of sales, but sales just felt so dang uncomfortable to me. I felt like such an idiot. Like, I don't know how to deal with objections, and I don't want to follow up with people, and I don't know how to follow up with people. In fact, when I was forced to sell on more than one occasion, to kick off the sales call, what a way to build a rapport, I would say things like, hey, just letting you know, I'm horrible at follow-up. I probably won't follow up. So either, if you want to buy today, we can do that. And if you don't want to, then call me later. Like, wow. There's an elite entrepreneur right there for you, right? So embarrassing to say this stuff. Sales is something that I realized was integral. You gotta be able to sell, and you got to be able to understand the numbers. Like, those two things, if they don't exist, you don't have a business. I would also say at some point you have to have cash, whether it's startup capital or an investor. Let's not get too much into that today, but I mean, sales is pretty essential for a business to keep going. So one day I decided enough is enough. I'm tired of being a weak little sissy boy, and I am going to put on my big boy pants, and I'm going to figure this out one or the other. Might take me months, might take me years, but I'm going to. That's all it took. And that's the funny thing about the decision on any one of these moments of surrender is it's free. It takes about one heartbeat worth of time to decide. And once you say go, it is remarkable how much your brain just opens up. And it's like, oh, actually, I think I was talking to someone, 2 weeks ago about what they were learning in sales. Maybe I should talk to them. And like, oh, I saw an ad for this sales guy. I wonder how much his course is, right? You'll be amazed how much it's called the reticular activating system, which is basically like when you buy a white car, suddenly you see all these white cars on the road. That's exactly how your RAS works with business and learning and opportunities as well. Your RAS doesn't turn on, though, until you decide something's going to happen, even if you have no idea how it's going to happen. And that's what happened for me with sales. I'm now sitting with you, happy to report that my close rate is between 85 and 90% these days. And I've been complimented over and over and over on how elegant and enjoyable and educational and funny at times my sales presentation is. So that was my sixth surrender. And it really just all came down to the fact that I was not willing to sell myself short. Hell is meeting the man I could have been. And there was no way that I was going to get to the pearly gates and say, wow, I was kind of cowardly and not very courageous. Heck no. I'm here to be an elite entrepreneur. Every time I hit one of these moments, I'm like, okay, it's time to go pro. And off I go. The seventh surrender, it was for me hiring a director of operations. So I already had an EA, I already had a production team, and now it was time to hire someone to run all of production. Not just do the thing like the production team, but actually oversee the production team and make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful. I will say that this was one of the more challenging decisions I've ever made. Surprisingly, not as scary as handing off my email inbox, but I think that's only because I had gotten an EA and I got used to the idea of delegating, and then I got used to delegating hard things by delegating my email inbox. And so oddly, it actually got easier by the time it came time to hand things off to a director of operations. Isn't that wild, right? You think it's a much bigger role, therefore it must be much scarier. Maybe for some people it is. For me, it really wasn't. So in the seventh surrender, which was hiring a director of operations, probably like the missing piece for a lot of people is, yes, the DOO, the director of operations, or the ops manager, yes, having the right person. However, the other big missing piece I discovered was having a defined process. What is the way that we deliver our service? If we can't draw that out on a flow chart or with like a big piece of paper on the wall, I probably don't have a process. If I can't explain it, if I can't externalize it and draw it, it doesn't really exist. And until I have that in place, it's pretty hard to hire a production team, and it's certainly difficult to hire a director of operations. Now, the one exception I might make to this is when you hire a director of operations who's so experienced that they can go and define some of that for you. Now, that oftentimes means that you're hiring a six-figure DOO or COO, and it might be 100 or 150 or 200K to go make that happen. So if you're in that position and you know exactly what you need in a DOO or a COO, then by all means, don't let me stop you. Maybe that is the answer for the more advanced or elite entrepreneur. For me, I kind of just needed to be that person, to play that role, to figure out what I needed. And only once I needed did I know how to write a job scorecard, and only once I had a job scorecard could I make a job posting, and only once I had a job posting could I start attracting great talent. So those are my 7 points of surrender, but there is actually an eighth surrender, and it's the one that I'm in right now. And if you recall, I shared with you that my foot is still on the gas. Not more than when I was first starting, but I'd say as much. And despite the fact that, we're actually getting close to having hired 1,000 executive assistants for our clients, I am not working any harder. However, I am still working hard. And the perfect example of that is marketing, and specifically this content I'm creating with you right now. Marketing to me seems big. It seems overwhelming. It seems like one of the hardest things to sort out fact from fiction, because guess what? You want to know who's selling marketing programs, telling you what the next big thing is? Marketers. And so they make all kinds of wild promises. And here it is, buyer beware, careful where I put my money. And the thing is like a lot of marketing programs, you can spend 10K, 20K, 30K very, very, very quickly. When it comes to ads, you can easily spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month just on ads. So it's like, oh my goodness, if I don't even really know what success entails, and I'm now going to go throw ad dollars on something that I don't know if I've hired the right person or not to be an ads person, oh my word, that all just sounds terrifying to me. That said, just like every other time, I've decided to put my big boy pants on. And so here I am creating content, including this video, and I am grinding it out. And, as you saw, like 3 hours, 4 hours of sleep, if that's what's required for a few nights, so be it. Because at the end of the day, surrender isn't about giving up. It's about leaning in. So I'm curious to know, what is your next surrender? Is it learning a new skill? Is it trusting your team? Is it letting go of control? Is it decommitting from a project? Decommitting from a volunteer position or a committee that you're on? Is it decommitting maybe from an entire business? You might have multiple businesses on the go, and you would really benefit from just letting one of them go. In my case, I have 2 businesses, and what I chose to do was actually put the other business more or less like on autopilot. So my main focus right now is Great Assistant, where we help entrepreneurs to get an executive assistant, not an overseas assistant, but a domestic, dedicated, direct hire, right-hand person, and that is my main business. In my other company, where, believe it or not, we actually teach financial education for entrepreneurs, in that company, we have a whole coaching program, and I basically have that on autopilot because I taught a coach how to run it for me, And all I have to do is show up is 3 hours every 2 weeks. That's the only effort I put into Profit Factory. Where Great Assistant is where I'm spending 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 14 hours on the most extreme days to get everything figured out and sorted. And I keep Tim Deanna Jonesing to figure out the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. So I'm curious to know, and I'd like you to reflect the things that you're resisting right now may be the exact things that you need to go and do. And on the other side of that will be your greatest breakthrough in income, influence, and honestly, peace and happiness. If this resonated with you, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, comment below with your biggest takeaway, and maybe even include what you're ready to surrender. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.